Hey guys, I'm going to jump straight in with this. I'm going to cover some deep controversial subjects that most people will refuse to acknowledge and even go into on their channels. This footage taken of the workings of a modern granite quarry. The guys are using modern ways of cutting the stone, from the latest diamond wire cutting technology to the other disc type cutting operations, and using modern machinery to lift and move the blocks. The ongoing debate across the YouTube channels are: how did the ancient Egyptians and other ancient races cut, quarry and produce the type of structures and artifacts in question that have been suggested are produced by copper tools? If you are new to this topic, please watch my evidence for high technology video, which I'll leave in the link description below. Thanks for watching. Please bear with me in what I'm going to be discussing and watch this till the end. Now, the question should be asked: were some of these cultures helped? The answer, I believe, is yes. The second question is who? This is what we are going to look into. This is a serious intellectual study into this topic. If you're looking for entertainment on Little Green Men, I'm afraid this isn't for you. Mauro Bellino worked for St. Paul's Press, translating and producing the interlinear Bibles for the Vatican. He was hired due to his deep knowledge of ancient Hebrew, Semitic and other ancient languages. His task was to provide the etymological meanings, i.e. the root meanings of the original Hebrew text from the Old Testament. I believe it's known as the Masoretic text. During his career, Bellino has directed and supervised the translation and publication of 17 books of the Old Testament for Edizione San Paolo, Italy's main Catholic publisher. His Vatican-approved texts are used in theological ancient Hebrew and biblical studies for schools and universities. However, when translating the root meanings of certain words from the original biblical text, he, like a few others, found that the actual meanings had been previously overlooked by other scholars. A major example of this is the original word used as God, i.e. the word Elohim, which, contrary to belief, is plural in nature and actually means many gods. What the Old Testament writers were referring to is not the one God, but many, 33 I believe in total. Mauro argues that these were actual beings of some kind that assisted man before departing. Unfortunately, the Vatican could not deal with the implications officially, and so fired him from his position. I say officially because unofficially they know of the ETI existence, their recorded history and their existence today. One of the reasons I'm covering Mauro's work is the Bible discusses the Egyptians, which helps us cross-reference with other works. Which we've discussed already, the term of God is Elohim, which is a plural, meaning many gods or advanced beings who came from heaven, e.g. the stars. Lord or Eternal is replaced with Yahweh or Jehovah. Most High is replaced with Elyon. Angel or angels are Malak or Malakim. The plural of these are messengers. The Spirit of God, which is written, is actually root meaning of Ruach. Ruach means a heavy thing in Hebrew. The glory of God, or Lord of the Eternal, is Kavod in Hebrew. The root meaning a craft or a flying machine. The eternity, which is Olam in Hebrew. The omnipotent, almighty, is replaced with El Shaddai. The original Old Testament was taken from the Masoretic text and distorted over years and years. The actual Old Testament is the book about Jacob, the tribe of Jacob, the first Israelites. It's originally taken from the other accounts, which describes advanced beings from the stars. It's changed from polytheistic to monotheistic, which is many gods to one God. One must read the Old Testament literally, ignoring the church's interpretations. It was written as facts, when hardly anyone could read. It was not meant as an allegory. It's also important to understand that the original Bible we refer to now has been condensed by the Church so much that in order to get the fuller picture, we need to read through the other books that were removed. The books of Enoch, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the books of the Giants, the 70 books of the Apocrypha, the entire volume of what's known as the Codex Sinaiticus, equivalent to the Encyclopedia Britannica as a Bible. This was removed in 325 AD by the Council of Nicaea under Constantine. The volumes were then taken and hidden away in a monastery in Sinai. One of the volumes is on display in the British Library, which cost them £100,000 to buy. Also to mention the lost or destroyed books from the Bible, the books of the Wars of the Lord, the book of the Egyptians and the book of Jasher. Other incredible works on the subject of assistance given to mankind are the work of Christian and Joy O'Brien on the subject of the Anunnaki, or Anarch, or Shining Ones. The Sons of Anak are also mentioned in the Old Testament. Christian O'Brien read natural sciences at Christ Church College, Cambridge, and spent many years as an exploration geologist in Iran, where he was involved in the discovery of the Choghat Zambil ziggurat. He was asked by the British Museum to translate ancient Coptic texts. He found and discovered the meanings of the Sumerian and Akkadian tablets written of the gods, which he published in his work, The Genius of the Few, an incredibly detailed account, a book which is out of print and very hard to get hold of. There are many great sources on Egypt, including constructions. We need to study all the options, not just the archaeology or Egyptology alone. We have the work of John Anthony West, geologists Robert Schoch, the original temple drawings from Napoleon's artists. There's the esoteric historical work of mathematician and alchemist R.A. Schwaller-de-Lubitz, whom John Anthony West's work was based on. There's the astronomical work of Norman Lockyer, dealing with the construction's layout with alignment to certain stars. And of course the work of Graham Hancock with his wife Arthur Hire, dealing with the megalithic nature of constructions, not just in Egypt but also around the planet. Everyone has their own perspective and piece of the pie. Graham's, like others, is the idea of a far older intelligent culture lost to antiquity, e.g. Atlantis, the Atlanteans. I also agree with this, but have another opinion. At the site of the unfinished obelisk in Aswan, you'll see a plaque before entering the quarry and the 1600-ton obelisk itself, with a description of how the historians believe it was done. This I do not agree with, which I'll cover. It reads, once the surface was cleared, large balls of dolerite attached to rammers were used as pounders to create trenches around the shape of the obelisk. The outline of the obelisk was then marked on the prepared surface. After the rough cut of the obelisk was freed from the quarry floor, it was recovered by means of levers and placed upon a sled of rollers. It was then dragged to the embankment and set on a large ship that would transport it to its destination. These are the dolerite pounders as mentioned. What we are told and led to believe is that there would have been rows of ancient Egyptians without gloves or safety footwear, using their pounders to smash away at granite, producing the channels around the obelisk, and using wooden pegs to cut out a certain section by soaking it in water to expand, causing a crack to appear, which will then again be smoothed off with the pounders. Christopher Dunn, a laser and precision engineer working through computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacture, came to the conclusion, like other engineers, that most of the structures and artifacts found were not just created by a mere simple process as accorded to them by the historians. In his work Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt, Christopher says that Egyptologists Hopkins and Lehner, this would be Mark Lehner that took over from Zoe Hawass, tried to recreate the work they believe was carried out using the dolerite pounders. However, the results didn't work in their favour. The cubic mass removed by the dolerite pounders from the granite itself over a 2.5 hour period was not at all enough to justify the time and method the ancient Egyptians supposedly used to carve out the unfinished obelisk. This is the modern way of carving and working granite. It's using modern type tools. A very kind Egyptian let me film him producing a statue of the falcon god Horus. This is beautifully done and a lot of work put in. This took several months from scratch, hence if you purchase real granite statues in Egypt, they are quite expensive. What's interesting I find is the way that he carves or cuts into the feet is done with a heat gun. I would imagine this would be a very high temperature. This was my first thought regarding working the granite. Back at the unfinished obelisk in the right hand side trench, which no one is normally allowed to go in. I managed to get permission though. As we walk down the side of the trench, the outside of the obelisk is on the left hand side of the screen. Note how the undercut has been carved out here. Just to add that the markings on the side, or horizontal striations as Christopher Dunn points out, are not caused by the downwards motion of a dolerite pounder, which is not even the same width, rather by something else. This device is known as an ion gun, which has the power to cut through even diamonds. It fires a beam of ionized particles at your target. Argon is normally used. It's made up of an anode with an insulator surrounded by magnets and a cathode which forms the outer shell. Argon is emitted into the chamber's interior. High voltage is applied between the anode and the cathode. Because there is a vacuum, one can apply between 2 to 10 kilovolts of potential before discharge happens. This gives the argon a tremendous amount of kinetic energy. This could be used to mould, cut and carve the granite bedrock. Yes, on my part, this is obviously theoretical. The evidence we find of this precision of somehow moulding solid rock into shape like putty, the immense weights of certain blocks cut and lifted into place, which puzzles engineers even today, is found worldwide. For now, we are just focusing on Egypt. My thoughts? Having spent a lot of time on these areas, not to mention the fact that I've spent the last 7 years travelling back and forth to Egypt on research, not just on the structures but also on the reliefs detailed within the temple walls, is that we are in no way alone and have had assistance by other intelligences, more so in the past. The evidence to support this is beyond reproach. This is inside the crypt of Dendera Temple. The gods and goddesses the temples are dedicated to are mostly associated with certain stars and constellations. Dendera Temple is dedicated to Hathor, who is said to have come from the Pleiades. This, as most people will know, is known as the famous Dendera light bulb. Various tests and experiments have been done, and a working model was created. The diploma I did on Egyptology, surprisingly, was not against the idea of the ancient Egyptians having some form of energy. This is the Osirian, the most famous megalithic temple site in all of Egypt. It is said to be the tomb of the being Osiris, who the ancient Egyptians say came from the star in the constellation of Orion's belt. It is also said that Osiris is linked to the Sumerian god Enki, as they were both water beings. As you can see, the site was originally underwater. It's dated to be over 15,000 years old by geologists, although an Egyptian wisdom keeper I know said it's 25,000 years old. These are painted on the inner walls of the Osirian itself. They show moments of incredible events within our past. These depictions are not on any temple wall found in the whole of Egypt. They are completely unique to this structure. Every other YouTube channel, alternative or mainstream, will either not know or will deliberately not discuss these pictures. All you will be shown is the footage of the blocks and the structure itself. Robert Temple is a member of the Royal Astronomical Society, the Society for Promotion of Hellenic Studies, the Egyptian Exploration Society, the Royal Historical Society, the British School of Archaeology at Athens, the Institute of Classical Studies, and the Institute of Historical Research. In his book, Robert explains the link between the ancient Egyptians and the Dogon tribe. The knowledge given to the Dogon of Sirius A and B, including other deep information, i.e. quantum theory, was given to them by beings from the Sirius star system over 5,000 years ago. I feel I should also mention that he was discouraged in publishing his book, not just mainstream but also from the CIA. Due to this dogma and stigma is one of the reasons why people refuse to cover this. However, I will. 3 videos became public after unauthorised leaks in 2007. In 2017, the Navy verified their authenticity. In July 2023, David Grush, working for the UAP Task Force, one of the highest ranked intelligence officers, along with retired F-18 pilot Commander David Fravor and former F-18 pilot Ryan Greaves, testified under oath in front of the Senate that the US has been participating in a secret UFO crash retrieval program, of which some of the bodies recovered are of non-human origins, referred to as non-human biologics, including a reverse engineering program of which he was denied access. This news was published by the media at the time, but for obvious reasons was not front page news. I believe when this topic comes to light and people say, why weren't we told? We were not alone. They will reply that we did tell you. You just chose to ignore it due to your ignorance or conditioning. Fortunately, there are now academics who have taken this subject seriously.
And biological effects. And I'm going to start out by talking about pretty much the first 3 all in one shot. And Gary mentioned the first paper that I wrote on this. I was interested in looking at some of these new cases, especially the Nimitz encounter. And I found it fascinating that, my graphics isn't quite working here. I found it fascinating that these things were, these tic-tac-shaped objects were observed to drop from about 28,000 feet to sea level in 0.78 seconds. That is crazy and really anomalous. How anomalous? Do the math, do the calculations. This is actually, I've criticized other physicists who've said, well, the analysis was rather simple. My response to this was like, yes, you should have done it. Your students could have done it. And in fact, there was a class in Georgia, a high school class in Georgia, high school physics class that used this paper as an example on how you can make estimates of kinematics. So if you look at this, you can estimate the minimum acceleration, which comes about from the object would have accelerated halfway and then decelerated the other half of the way. That gives you a lower bound for the acceleration, which comes out to be around 5,000 Gs. 5,000 times the acceleration of gravity. No, people aren't going to survive this. Most equipment won't survive this. An F-35's wings will rip off at about 13 Gs. So 5,000 Gs is really anomalous. And we estimated the power, and of course to do this you need to know the mass. We don't know the mass. These things were estimated to be about the size of an F-18, and an F-18 is around 10,000 kilograms of mass. We decided let's take a much lower bound, let's take 1/10 of that. So we just assuming that this was maybe 1/10 of the mass of an F-18, you come out to a power that you can't read under there easily of 1,100 gigawatts of power. This is more than 10 times the total nuclear power output of the United States. Let that sink in for a minute.
I'll leave the link to the previous video in the description. He also talks about many other details, including the luminosity and that these craft have been recorded from radar, flying at thousands of miles an hour since 1954. Let that sink in. These are obviously not ours. Also, I'm going to briefly touch on the crop circle phenomenon. Yes, they can be man-made, and unfortunately quite a few these days are. The ones I'm going to show you are not man-made at all, and the reasons why. This is one of what's known as the Julia set. This formed in the time of 45 minutes opposite Stonehenge on Sunday the 7th of July 1996. 915 feet long formation consisting of 151 circles. This is known as the Triple Julia set, formed 3 weeks afterwards on the 29th of July at Windmill Hill near Avebury. Each circle displayed a different swirl detail. The pattern was over 200 metres across. The difference between man-made circles and the ones that aren't: broken and damaged oilseed rape stalks with muddy tracks versus new and fresh oilseed rape circle. The swirled plants are not broken or damaged. There's also the anomaly of bent nodes in a fresh crop circle. This is associated with phototropism, where plants move towards the light. Magnetic particles were found in the soil in a number of fresh crop circles made and discovered. This is known as the Milk Hill UFO footage of 26th of July 1990. The footage was studied and verified. The tractor driver who was working in the field confirmed that he saw the light object with the naked eye. I believe this might be the only real footage of the unknown aerial phenomenon, or UAP as it's called today, producing this actual crop circle in 1990 at Milkwood. Now, before just dismissing this as, oh, it's just CGI, no. Apart from the eyewitness of the farmer on the grounds, the footage was also analysed and found to be legitimate. Unfortunately, apart from Project Sign, Grudge and Blue Book, after Roswell there was an official disinformation campaign ridiculing the UFO's phenomena, which unfortunately spread like wildfire through most people even today. Not to mention the amount of ridiculous videos other people put out just to get views. Even faced with hard, irrefutable evidence, most people still find it hard to talk about. We need to put this behind us. We aren't talking about little green men, but we are talking about other intelligences outside our world. What appears to be the shadowy side is the cattle mutilation and the abduction phenomenon, which we will touch on. A Strange Harvest is an old documentary looking into the serious side of cattle mutilation by investigative journalist Linda Moulton Howe. Not on the YouTube platform, but it can be found online. If you're new to this specific area, this happens worldwide, not just in parts of America. When it happens, it's normally just in the local newspaper. Mostly the cattle who are grazing in pasture. The odd one is taken and certain parts of its anatomy are removed. Normally it's found bloodless, meaning all of its blood is taken without a drop on the ground remaining. There is no trace or even any DNA evidence found on site. When found by the rancher, it's traumatic and also a financial loss. Other animals, e.g. scavengers, will also not go anywhere near the carcass. Investigations carried out all remain unsolved. Some ranchers who will not go on record say they saw a blue light lift and then place the animal back down. I personally believe this is a research-based event. Department Head of Psychiatry at Harvard and Pulitzer Prize winner Professor John Mack decided to study the abduction phenomenon. He wrote 2 very detailed books on this and said that we need to look into our reality in a different way. I covered this on a previous video in more detail, which I'll leave in the link description below. Again, covering the other intelligences, which are many species and have different views that have visited us. This is just a short clip of an event where the children of the aerial school in Zimbabwe witnessed the craft and beings had landed outside their school premises on 16th of September 1994, who were interviewed by John Mack. I also need to mention that he was tragically run over in London in 2004 by a supposedly drunk driver.
What noise?
The noise that we heard in the air.
You heard a noise in the
Yes.
air? What was it like? Like a roar or a buzz or a hum or what kind of a noise?
It was like someone was blowing a flute. It was scary myself.
It was scary because you saw something yourself?
Yes. I saw a little object hovering. It was quite big actually, and then there was little ones all around it. We saw something silver, and then we quickly ran to the logs, and we saw a silver thing, and we saw a man standing next to it.
What was it? What did it feel like when he was looking at you?
Felt scared.
It felt scared? What was scary about it?
Well, felt scared because I've never seen such a person like that before.
Did you see the eyes? What did they look like?
They were going like that.
Where was the pointy part? Was the pointy part in here or was the pointy part out there? Up there.
Graham Hancock covered the face of Mars and the fact that the planet originally had an atmosphere before being destroyed by a bombardment of cometary debris, which left a huge divide known as the line of dichotomy. Obviously, when researching these areas, it's like walking through a treacle due to the secrecy more so previously involved and the amount of fake footage, including disinformation by and against the public. Which is why someone like Stanton Friedman, a nuclear physicist who worked in classified projects, is an asset in uncovering this information through various channels. After learning of the existence of a shadow government and certain agencies involved in this field, he devoted his life to uncovering the past facts and learning what's happening now. His book goes into the detail of the fake and real information released. The same as Professor John Mack, he refused to bow down and change his mind on this till the end of his life. Since this field is so vast and contains so many different avenues, without producing a 10-hour video, I will say, in order to grasp the basics of this topic, you need to understand the nature of our reality. Then you'll know how this phenomenon is possible and how vast distances are covered, the aspect of space-time, our different dimensions, consciousness, and how everything is connected. Since there's so much to learn on this field, I would say the work done by mostly Donald Hoffman, amongst others, would be a great start. Going back to the use of copper tools, which cannot produce a lot of the artifacts found in the past, and the obvious question, where are the tools that made these? Why are they not found in the archaeological record? The answer is simple. Why give or leave advanced systems that could possibly be used as weapons by a human society which has a destructive nature? Look at our past history, the killing of each other for territory or power or both.